All right, men, welcome to today's episode of Strong Men, Strong Marriages. 3 steps to stop a marriage fight and create more intimacy. So this is something I realized just yesterday after having a fight with my wife, and how we can break out of that pattern a little faster. So my name is Mike Fraser, MD. I'm a psychiatrist and marriage coach, and I help hardworking Christian men have more intimate marriages. So some wins from guys in my program, the Strong Men, Strong Marriages program. Guys are having improved physical connection. Look, like when your wife feels safe with you and opens her heart up to you, then she opens her body up to you. That's kind of the sequence, okay? So as wives are feeling safer with their husbands, mentally, emotionally, physically, right? They're opening their bodies up to their husbands. Wives are sharing more of their hearts with their husbands. Again, like when she feels safer, she starts sharing her heart a little bit. And then typically she withdraws, and then she shares a little more, then she withdraws. But the more you can be there and be a safe place for her to share her heart, the more she's going to open it up to you, okay? Men are feeling proud of how they're responding to their wives. Look, sometimes you can act in a way that you can feel totally proud of, and your wife doesn't respond how you want. That's life, okay? That's going to happen. At the end of the day, we just want to be able to say to ourselves, hey, like, I'm proud of how I acted. And guys are doing that, and it's super fun to see them do that. Guys are improving their relationships with their kids. When you learn these relationship skills, look, you build a better relationship with God, which is the foundation, then a better relationship with yourself, which those two kind of go together as you see yourself as son of God. Like you can see yourself in a much better light. So yeah, that's what happens. And then that kind of translates into better relationships with other people, including your wife. Just with our wife, it's special, right? There's that physical, that romantic element that makes it special too. Guys are feeling more calm and clear-minded. That's an exercise in mental strength and learning how your brain works. Filling your mind with more godly thoughts really is kind of the bottom line. And for me, the win was just catching this pattern that I'm going to share with you today. So you learn from my failure, right? So what you're trying right now. So your wife brings something up to you. And look, this is a pattern my wife and I were in for a long time. We'd stepped out of it, I'd stepped out of it, and then kind of came back into it last night. This happens, okay? When we get under more stress, we tend to go back to old patterns. Doesn't mean we've erased all the progress we've done, just means it happens sometimes. You learn from it, you apologize, you move forward. So your wife might bring something up to you. Maybe it has to do with money, maybe it has to do with sex, maybe it has to do with in-laws, parenting, religion, housework, or free time. And you just don't agree with whatever she's saying, right? You feel threatened by it for some reason. So in this particular case, it was about money. So last night, my wife wanted to take my son out to dinner. And it took me a while to actually kind of download why I felt anger about that. But there's just like I got emotionally activated, right? I could feel it. I could feel the anger in my body. And it wasn't even right then. It came later. So like we even started out and we were kind of understanding, but then like I felt it, right? Something happened. She said something and I got angry. Right? I could feel it in my body. That hot feeling was rising. And it's almost like it builds up. Like I have these words like building up and like they're trying to come out of my throat. And I know that it's probably not the best thing to say, but I can feel it, right? It's a physical sensation that happens, okay? Also, I feel kind of hot. So for you, it might be whatever, right? Maybe you resonate that, maybe you don't. But there's an emotion that happens before you go into these patterns. And that's what I really want you to understand, okay? So again, you feel that anger rising. What is anger? So what anger is, it's a natural response to obstructions to your will. It's a definition, it's the best definition I've seen yet. It comes from my favorite book lately, The Divine Conspiracy. But yeah, it's not necessarily a wrong thing. It's just like, that's in my way, and so I'm mad about it. Okay. But that depends what you do about it. So yeah, if you've listened to this podcast for a while, you know I'm a fan of leadership and self-deception. Kind of the main point of that is we can see people either as people or as objects. So when you are angry, you are seeing this other person as an object. You're seeing them as an obstacle to what you want to accomplish. So for example, my wife taking my son to dinner, how was that an obstacle to me? Really, it wasn't, but I interpreted it as an obstacle. Okay, like she's spending money. Okay, that's an obstacle to me saving money. That's in my way of saving money. She's spending fun time with them while I'm home. That makes me mad. That's not fair, right? That's injustice. Okay, that's another definition of anger that's pretty good, as it's a response to injustice. So, yeah, if we can still frame it inside of this, right, of obstruction to my will. Like my will is that everything be fair, and if anything, like kind of tilted my favor. Definitely not tilted someone else's favor. So your goal in anger is just to get that obstacle out of the way as soon as possible. All right. So what does that look like in an argument with your wife? So it might look like you trying to convince her that you're right and she's wrong. Okay. So a lot of times that can take the form of the invalidation triple threat we've been talking about lately. So I could say to her something like, hey, look, like you shouldn't be taking them out to dinner. We've got to save money. Or you should be doing it equally with all the kids, not just them. I actually said all this stuff. So I was trying to convince her she was wrong, right? Or feeling that way. Well, you shouldn't feel like that's important. You should feel like other family time's important. So I'm saying all this stuff, but really I'm not even saying what's going on with me because I hadn't taken the time to really understand what's going on with me that well. And like, I'm right. Well, I'm right because we're going to make it fair and we're going to make it, so that, yeah, like, yeah, and we're saving money, right? So I'm right. I'm morally right here. There's a moral issue and I'm on the right side of it. So that's one way we can go about it. And a lot of times hardworking, high achieving guys, smart guys, they'll do this, right? They'll try to kind of bully their wife. Not bully, but like invalidate her. Kind of bully. We're coming up on that. Another way guys might respond is passive aggressive. Okay, fine. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, take him out. Fine. Right? That's what that sounds like. And your wife's like, well, is it fine? And you're like, yeah, fine, just go. Right? But really it's not fine, and your tone is communicating that, but your words are communicating something else. So you're out of integrity, you're making your wife guess. It's frustrating for everybody, right? Maybe she goes, maybe she doesn't after you throw your little hissy fit, right? So that's another way guys might respond when they're feeling angry. Okay, it's passive aggression. The other way is bullying, getting mad. How dare you spend that money? Like, that's not fair. I make that money, right? And look, guys, like, I'm not proud of it, but all this stuff kind of happened. I was acting in pretty much all these ways. So what's the result, right? What happens? Maybe you win that argument, right? You win. Okay, fine. Let's say my wife was like, okay, fine. Yeah, like, you're right. I shouldn't take him out to dinner. So you win the argument, but now what happens? Like, your wife feels less safe with you. She closes her heart to you. She closes her body to you, right? That's the sequence. That's what's happening when you let anger run these arguments, okay? So what do you do instead? I promise you 3 steps, right? So step 1, you have to notice your anger. Okay, if you can't notice your anger, and especially if you can notice like smaller increments of anger, like irritation or frustration, that'll help, because once it gets to elevated levels, rage, livid, and these are coming from an app called How We Feel that's helped me kind of identify my emotions better. Still working on it. I'd rate myself not super high on that still. But like it takes some emotional intelligence, right? To be able to say, okay, like I feel that in my body, I feel that anger, right? So where do you feel it? Again, told you, I feel it in my chest, and kind of like that desire to shoot back with something at her, right? Be like, she's like, well, you don't do this. I'm like, well, neither do you, right? I can kind of feel it building, right? So that can be my signal. Okay, I'm noticing it. It's happening, right? So step 2 is releasing the emotion. So it's going to need to release somehow, okay? Now, this kind of ties into step 3, but some steps we teach in the program is this isn't as much, but praying, right? Pray, hey, like, God, I need some help here. Like, I feel this anger rising. I need some help. That's a great thing to do. Breathing, right? That has good evidence for letting you relax. Name it. Another good way to start releasing it. Just saying, hey, I'm feeling angry. That starts releasing that anger from your body. Okay. Feel it in your body, release it. Find a way to release it. So with anger, usually you got to do something pretty active. Usually, especially if it's risen to that level of like a lot of anger. Okay, because what happens when you're in that mode, your thinking brain shuts down, you're in fight or flight, and yeah, you just need to let that out. There's norepinephrine, adrenaline, it's all in your system, epinephrine, right? It needs to get out, it needs to be released, it needs to be burned off. So you need to probably do something physical if it's risen to that level. Okay, so go release the emotion, which comes to step 3, which is either listen or walk away. So if you're really feeling angry, you probably need to walk away. Now, occasionally, like let's say you have a prayer or just a thought comes to mind, right? Which, could be a revelation of, oh, like, I need to just like listen. It's time for me to listen. And sometimes that can fix it, right? That can release it. And sometimes not, right? So if you're calm enough, start listening, right? If you're calm enough to get in your shoes, do it, right? One of the biggest helps for me, and kind of my shortcut on this, is just like, okay, if I feel anger, I need to either walk away or I need to get on my computer. Now, get on my computer. So when I do coaching, I'm on my computer a lot. And because we do it virtually. And so we use a tool where a lot of times I'm typing out what people are thinking. And so for me, that's a way to appropriately distance myself and put myself into her shoes. So I can just grab my computer and start jotting down actually what she's saying, right? And I can even notice, like I can notice when I'm doing it, if my anger starts to rise. Again, like it kind of starts in my chest and kind of comes to my mouth, like I want to say something mean back, right? So if I start typing it and she's like, well, I just think it's important for our kids to have some special time with us. Then if I'm typing it out and I start feeling anger, might start typing something like, you want them to have fun with you, but not with me, right? Would be like a misinterpretation that's coming from anger. But typing out helps me see it, right? Instead of just believing it, I can look at it and say, well, like, wait a second, is that actually what she said? I don't think so. Like, would I do this with a client? Definitely not. And so that's been a really helpful tip for me. So maybe that's helpful for you too. Just kind of like taking out a piece of paper, trying to jot down what she's saying. It can just kind of take away some of that emotional intensity so that you can get into her shoes a little bit better, instead of taking it all super personally and having your anger rise to where you can't really focus or pay attention. Now, so either start listening or walk away, right? Walk away until you can come back and actually listen. And really, it's a pretty good exercise to just kind of really try to jot down kind of what her point of view is. And not her point of view like she's the worst person and here's what she's really thinking because she's so bad. But actually trying to think, okay, like this is a reasonable person. Like I married her, I love her. Why would she actually think this in a positive way? Okay, get into her shoes. Like in this case, her point of view was, hey, look, Mike, like you've had a problem with money forever, with spending money, like no matter how much is there, and you never want to spend it. Like that's kind of on you. That's not really my deal. And like spending some money on the kids, actually, in my mind, is a good way to spend money. Which actually, even as I'm saying this, like it's kind of hard for me to agree with that. Even though I do agree with it, like emotionally, there's something still holding on there that makes it hard. Like I do agree, like spending good time with kids is a great way to spend money, and creating some special memories. What could be better than spending some money to do that, right? But I still need to like pray and release some emotion around that. And then like that fairness aspect, right? And then because I even brought that up to her, and she's like, well, listen, man, like I've told you lots of times, like go take the kids out too. Like it's fine. Like I'm not trying to monopolize their time. So if I'm actually like in a spot where I can see her point of view, and I did this last time, I was like, oh yeah, like I changed my mind a lot, and this has been back and forth, and that's got to be pretty frustrating for her. It made a lot of sense, right? But it's really hard, if not impossible, to get there if you're really worked up. Okay, I think it is impossible. So you got to get away, you got to release that emotion, you got to find a way to be able to get into her shoes. All right. So again, those steps were, again, notice your anger, release the emotion, and then either listen if you can or walk away if you can. Okay. So why does this work? So I used to think the angry exchanges were like the best way, because then like everything comes out that you've been holding on to. Like I kind of like intentionally provoke my wife into getting mad so that I would actually know what was going on with her. That was my framework anyway. And look, there's some truth to that. Sometimes like when you are angry, you say things you've been kind of holding on to. But the other thing that happens is it creates a lack of safety, and it creates closing of hearts. And a lot of times, we mean it, but also like we mean it in a mean, hurtful way. We're trying to remove obstacles. We're trying to injure people, Also, the panicked brain, it's not really a place to learn or understand others, so nothing really gets gained. So even if she said something that could be really useful, if I'm in a spot where my brain's activated, I'm not going to hear it. I'm not going to be able to learn from it. Okay, I'm not going to be able to integrate it into my thinking because I'm in that panic state. The other thing that happens, you get this like tug of war or sun and wind situation. Like I'm pulling on my side. What that naturally does, the other person starts pulling on theirs. They dig into more to their position, right? Or the sun and the wind, that parable where the guy's walking, he has a coat, the wind comes out, tries to blow it away, the guy just holds on harder. That's like when we try to prove our point, prove our wife wrong, right? Where the sun just kind of like opens up a new way of thinking, right? Invites, and it's more effective. That person might still wear their coat, but they probably won't, right? They'll probably take it out because it gets uncomfortable. Okay, so A good scripture about this: a gentle answer deflects anger, but harsh words make tempers flare. So a lot of my anger, I feel those words bubbling up, right? I can feel it in my chest. It's coming up. So if I can remember this scripture, right, pray and be like, okay, like I can do this, yeah, but it's just going to make everybody more mad and shut down communication, create lack of safety, and all of that. Okay. So the good news is you can take the lead, right? You can change the dance. You can, even if your wife comes in angry, like you can not be angry. You can do a soft answer. How do you do that, right? Notice if you're feeling angry, let it go, okay? Release it, right? And then listen if you can. Also, if you're just like running on God, right? If you're really feeling that spiritual power, like you'll probably be in a spot a lot more often to listen, okay, and understand her. All right, so what skills does this require? It requires spiritual strength, like a kingdom heart. So a kingdom heart, again, according to this book that I'm reading, The Divine Conspiracy, it's one that genuinely wants the good of your wife and yourself. Okay, so if you come into this situation, like let's say she's like, hey, I want to take my son to dinner, right? And I'm like, I want good for her and I want good for my son. Even if I just took that mindset to begin with, it would probably be like, that's good for both of them. So great, right? Is that good for me too? Probably, right? And I think that's like the internal struggle, right? Well, I'm home making dinner while they go out, and that's not fair, right? And all of that, right? So that needs to be settled, and we need to kind of figure out like a fair thing there. But the thing that's annoying to her, and as I'm thinking about it to me too, like I've said, yeah, do it, it's great, right? But then I go back on it, and that's frustrating. Like that's hard for her, and so that's something I have to work on. So yeah, it takes that kingdom heart, right? It also takes mental and emotional strength and skill. It's not easy to recognize your emotions. It's not easy if you haven't practiced it. That's the bottom line. If you haven't practiced it, if you're not used to it, it's not easy. It gets easy as you practice it. So it takes mental, emotional strength and skill to notice your emotions, release them, come back later. It takes mental, emotional skill, which takes practice. Okay. That also takes communication, intimacy skills. How can I listen to her? How can I express myself well? All these things get better just with, first of all, you gotta learn it. You gotta learn the skills, but then you have to practice. Okay. So come learn it and come practice it in Strong Men, Strong Marriages. We're going to help each other grow in these ways. So visit strongmen.io or visit the link in the show notes and come join our email list. You get a free 7-day series. It's going to teach you how to create more passion and intimacy in your marriage. And also you're going to get exclusive offers on how to join the program when the program opens. All right. So very good, guys. Stay strong, men, and we will see you next episode. Yeah, I might switch up that last thing. So stay strong in God, and I'll see you next episode.